So I found this big old compressor pump on the side of the street. 2 cylinders, cast aluminum housing, and this big old cast iron flywheel on it. I figured this would make for some good scrap. But first I wanted to take it apart to see what was wrong with it, and if at all I could fix it.
greensandmachines.com.
Yes, so I found this compressor pump on the side of the street. It appears to have suffered some damage. So I'm going to take it apart, see what we can do with it. I was thinking just scrapping the aluminum, melting it down. But who knows? If I get it to work, I could build my own compressor. Could build my own oil burner, something or other. But we got 2 cylinders. This massive cast iron flywheel. And lots of grease to clean off. Alright. There appears to be a chunk missing from something. Well, we found the manifold where the air goes through. Something broke off some point along the way. But for demonstration purposes, let's spin that wheel. So it appears to not be completely seized up, which is a good thing. Let's take off the other end. Oh, it appears that the spring that keeps air from going back into the compressor is broken off in one of the cylinders. So air is being compressed this way. But when the piston backs out, there's supposed to be a spring that holds this closed so air doesn't go back in and leak out of the tank. And it appears this piece is attached somewhere. Like that. Oh, look at that. Here's the problem. That goes like that. Air is supposed to come in the cylinders through here, where they open up from this inlet looking thing, and air is supposed to go out the pistons to these spring loaded things, but one of them is broken evidently. In fact, it looks like a chunk of the broken spring tried going out through the outlet, but it didn't make it all the way. So, it looks like the housing being cracked would have nothing to do with the compressor not operating. Because this side doesn't have airtightness, probably just oil reservoir leaking. So, I've decided I'm just going to take it apart and melt down the aluminum, because it looks like too difficult of a repair. But a great educational experience in how compressors work. Yay! Oh, it was tapered. Tapered bore. So that'll make a good medallion for a necklace or something. Hang it on the wall. Use it as a steering wheel in my next go-kart. You know? Oh, trivet for my cooking, so I don't have to use my Coach Z medallion anymore. I like that idea. Now we can start taking this thing apart. Piston. Piston. Yeah. So at this point, most of the challenging, fun parts are done. I'll just cut to where it looks all nice and clean. Alright, let's take a look at what we got here. First of all, the more obvious flaw with this thing is that the case is cracked in two pieces, the main body and the oil reservoir. So that would definitely cause oil to leak out the bottom, which would not be good. This thing right here I discovered is not only the cap where you fill the oil, but it has a built-in dipstick. You see those graduations line up with the level the oil should be at. And then we got this little drain plug for draining dirty oil. You know, I just love taking stuff apart. It just teaches me how stuff works. That's what I'm doing here, really. So up here I have a strong inclination that these cylinder walls are lined with steel. Yes, it's a magnet, and it's magnetic, which would definitely cause them to not wear out as fast as if they were aluminum. And I could see there are serrations, focus, like embedded into the wall, so that suggests to me that these steel inserts were either cast directly into the part as they die casted it, or press fit in somehow and then finish smooth afterwards. Now this right here was curious because there's a hole right there. I'm led to believe that is a vent so air can come in, so it's not just airtight in the oiled reservoir. That would probably not do good. And of course, radiator fins, because this thing gets hot as you compress air. Now moving over to the internals that were the problem. So one of the cylinders, this one, appeared to be perfectly functional, because here's the manifold. Air would come in through here. I took that filter out because it was filthy, but it was held in with this screen. There's a piece of like fabric or something there. So this is like the manifold. Air comes in this way, comes in through these spring-loaded things, gets compressed through these spring-loaded things the other direction, and then out through the outlet. And I believe there's a secondary outlet, so there can be some kind of gauge for how much pressure is in the tank, so it would turn off the motor once it gets high enough. That's my best guess. So you can see that both inlet springs or valves or whatever you call them are intact. So air can come in both cylinders, but the outlet one on this cylinder is missing. And I found the remains of it, where it's kind of obvious that this used to go over that, and then I would have to guess that that and that are what is left of this leaf spring that used to be right there. And like I said, I found one of these pieces wedged in the outlet or the inlet. So that would be something that would need to be fixed for this compressor to be functional, completely functional. If I put it back together, it would run, but one of the cylinders would be useless because the outlet air would just come right back in, thereby making the point of compressing it pointless. And as for the pistons, it appears they have holes in there, probably for spreading oil around there. And here's how there's all these split spring things. So I think the two thin ones went there, holding this one in. So I guess that's for the oil spreading. And then there were some thicker ones that went in those two grooves. So in some way or another, that keeps it airtight, or keeps the piston centered in the bore so it doesn't knock all over the place. Again, I'm no expert on this, I'm just trying to figure it out as I go. And the connecting rods are held in with these what look like tube dowels. And then there were these little plastic things that fit in there, probably to either assist in lubrication or to prevent from scratching the sides of the bore. Now looking at the main housing upside down, we have a major bore right here and an adapter plate, and it has to have this huge hole so the crankshaft can fit in there. And then the bearing that is pressed in there, which I couldn't get out yet because it's a blind hole. But basically that fits in like that. Other bearing fits in there, except it was a press fit and I pressed it out back in, but you can see how that spins. And the flywheel attached on this taper, which is kind of curious because I did not see any key in there preventing anti-rotation. So maybe just the friction of it being held on there was holding it on. Or someone else took it apart and took the key out, I don't know. Oh, and the thing that I thought was actually pretty funny is this is the bottom that holds the connecting rod onto there. And it has this tail on it, so you can see that sticks above the oil level. Basically what I'm thinking is, as the piston's going up and down, I know it seems kind of primitive, but this tail just splashes the oil all around because this thing's filled with oil. So all it's doing is just splashing oil all over everywhere in there, because this needs to be lubricated, this needs to be lubricated, this needs to be lubricated, the pistons need to be lubricated, these need to be lubricated. And I know all this lubrication sounds like a lot of oil splashing everywhere, but that brings me to the next part. I'm calling it a rotary O-ring. This was actually pressed in that. So, as this thing's spinning, this thing is actually spring loaded. There's this tiny coil spring applying pressure inwards, so that would keep oil from leaking out this way as it's spinning. And that was the first time I'd actually seen one of these, so I always wondered, how do they make stuff watertight if it's spinning? So yeah, this was a fun project. This is a fun thing to find on the side of the street. One or more of these castings had one of those date stamp things that said 95, so if that's the year, it was made in 1995. Another thing I noticed was one of the pistons is actually quite dented on the top, which I'm assuming was because this one had this piece of metal like lodged right here or some way like that, so the piston would just be banging on it non-stop, whereas the other one's just gracefully coated with grease. So yeah, that's the compressor autopsy. This makes up for that class I had in middle school where we had tech lab and we were supposed to take the engine apart, but the teacher said don't take the engine apart because it takes so long. That's what I would have seen. Fun stuff.